Okay, let's dig into this. We've got quite a bit of material here on something really kind of weird in statistics. It's a paradox, right? Where you see one trend in different groups, but it just like flips or disappears when you put all the data together.
Just Simpson's paradox. Or
Mm.
sometimes, yeah, Simpson's reversal. It's one of those things that well, it really shows how just looking at the big picture, the averages, can fool you if you're not careful.
Yeah.
You bump into it a lot in, say, social sciences, medical studies, anywhere trying to figure out complex stuff.
It just feels impossible, though. How can something be true for like every part but false for the whole thing? So our mission here is to unpack this counterintuitive idea, figure out why it happens, and look at some pretty amazing real-world examples from the sources you sent over.
Yeah, we're definitely going to look at some cases where relying on just the combined numbers really led people astray. It's a good reminder that, the numbers don't always spell out the whole story on their own.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What is Simpson's paradox exactly? Like the core definition.
Okay, well, simply put, it's when you see a relationship, a trend between two things.
Yeah.
Let's say treatment and outcome, but that trend reverses, completely flips, when you don't account for a third factor, a lurking variable, and you just combine all the data. That third thing is mixing things up.
And it's not like this is a totally new discovery, right? The readings mentioned people noticed similar stuff way back.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Edward Simpson described it formally in '51, but statisticians like Carl Pearson, Udine Ewell, they saw similar effects, like around the turn of the last century, 1899, 1903. The name Simpson's paradox actually came much later, in 1972. So yeah, it's been puzzling people for a while.
I thought it was interesting. One mathematician, Jordan Ellenberg, he sort of said it's not a real contradiction in the math itself. It's more like there are two different valid ways to slice the same data, and the lesson is maybe to keep both the parts and the whole in view at the same time.
That's a great way to put it. The math works fine. It's our interpretation that gets tripped up if we miss how the data is structured or what's influencing it behind the scenes. And usually, yeah, that missing piece is some kind of confounding variable that isn't spread evenly across the groups you're looking at.
Okay, let's get into the examples, because this is where it clicks, right? Those aha moments. And the material has some classics. First one, that big UC Berkeley study on potential gender bias in grad school admissions back in '73.
Right. This is the textbook case, really. So at first glance, just looking at the total numbers, men seemed way more likely to get in than women.
And the difference looked pretty big, didn't it? Like 44% of the men got in, but only 35% of the women out of thousands of applicants.
Yeah.
That kind of gap, yeah, it definitely made people worry about bias against women.
It absolutely did. But the key thing missing from that simple total was which department they were applying to. And when the researchers broke it down department by department, well, the story changed completely.
This is it, the paradox. It turned out women tended to apply more often to departments that were just tougher to get into, period, for everyone. And men maybe applied more often to departments that generally accepted more people.
Exactly right. Look at the 6 biggest departments they studied. Department A, for example. High admission rate overall is like 64%.
Okay.
In that department, 62% of the men got in. But get this, 82% of the women who applied got in.
Wow. So in that department, women actually did much better, although looks like fewer women applied there compared to men.
That's key. Fewer women applied there. Now, contrast that with, say, Department C or E, much lower admission rates overall, like 35%, 25%. Tougher programs. In Department C, men 37%, women 34%. Department E, men 28%, women 24%. So in those harder departments, men had a slightly higher rate.
And crucially, the data showed way more women were applying to those really competitive ones like C and E, and fewer men. The opposite of Department A.
That's the whole reversal right there. The overall lower rate for women wasn't because departments were biased against them overall. It was because a bigger chunk of the female applicants were aiming for those super competitive departments where everyone's chances were lower. Men's overall rate looked higher, partly because more of them applied to the easier to get into departments.
So the study's actual conclusion, once they accounted for the department, was,
Well,
a small bias in favor of women, statistically.
yeah, a small but statistically significant bias in favor of women. The apparent bias against women in the total numbers was an artifact of where they chose to apply, not bias within the departments, mostly.
Amazing. Just shows how that aggregate number hid what was really going on, driven by where people applied.
Powerful example. Okay,
Uh-huh.
ready for another one? This time medicine. Kidney stones.
All right, let's hear it. Kidney stone treatments.
Okay, so this study compared 2 treatments, Treatment A, which was open surgery, kind of the traditional way, and treatment B, a newer, less invasive method, closed surgery. Just looking at the totals. Treatment B looked better, more successful.
Right, the numbers were like treatment A, 78% success rate, treatment B, 83%. So yeah, looking at that, you'd say go with B.
Seems obvious. But just like Berkeley, there was a hidden factor, a confounding variable, the size of the kidney stones. When they broke down the results by stone size small stones versus large stones.
No, here it comes again.
You guessed it. For small stones, treatment A, 93% success. Treatment B, 87%. So A was better for small stones.
Okay.
And for large stone. Treatment A, 73% success. Treatment B, 69%. Again, treatment A was better.
Wait, what? How? Better for small stones and better for large stones? But B looked better overall. How does that work?
It's about who got which treatment and how hard the cases were. You see, doctors tended to choose treatment A, the open surgery, more often for the difficult cases, the large stones. They tended to use treatment B, the less invasive one, more often for the easier cases, the small stones.
Okay. So treatment A's overall score got dragged down because it was used on lots of tough cases, the large stones, which are just harder to treat anyway.
Exactly. And treatment B's overall score got boosted because it was used so much on the small stones, which have a higher success rate no matter what.
So B looked better overall, not because the treatment itself was superior across the board, but because it got used more on the easier patients. The stone size itself was a bigger factor in success than the choice between A and B.
Precisely. The confounding variable, stone size, influenced both which treatment was chosen and the outcome. Classic Simpson's paradox setup.
Okay, let's switch it up. Baseball. The material mentions batting averages, Derek Jeter versus David Justice. Lighter topic, same idea.
Yeah, exactly the same principle.
Yeah.
Here, the lurking variable is basically the number of chances each player got their at-bats in different periods. So let's look at 95 and 96 for Justice and Jeter.
Okay, 1995, Justice hit .253, Jeter hit .250. Justice was slightly better.
Right.
1996, Justice hit .321, Jeter hit .314. Justice was better again. So Justice had the higher average in both years.
He did. But combine their stats for 95 and 96 together. Justice's combined average, .270. Jeter's combined average, .310. Jeter is suddenly way better overall.
No way. How? He was worse in both individual years.
It's the weighting. It all comes down to the number of at-bats in each year. David Justice had way more at-bats in 1995, which was his worst year of the two. Derek Jeter, on the other hand, had way more at-bats in 1996, which was his better year.
Oh, I see. So Justice's lower .253 average from 95 counted more towards his total because he played a lot that year. And Jeter's higher .314 from 96 counted more towards his total because he played a lot that year.
You got it. The overall average isn't just a simple average. It's weighted by how many chances you got. The guy who played more in his weaker period gets pulled down overall. And apparently, this isn't super uncommon in baseball. The source mentioned it happens between pairs of players, like maybe once a season or so.
Man, these examples really hammer it home. The big picture average can be totally flipped if the groups underneath are different sizes or dealing with different underlying conditions.
Absolutely. It just screams.
Yeah.
Don't take aggregated data at face value without asking questions.
The material also gets a bit more technical, right? Mentions thinking about it with vectors.
Yeah, that's a more mathematical way to visualize it. Think of success rates as slopes. Combining groups is like adding vectors. The paradox happens when the combined vector ends up pointing in a different sort of direction than the individual ones. It also mentioned correlations too. Like you might see price and demand positively correlated overall.
Which sounds weird. Usually, higher price means lower demand.
Right. But maybe over time, both price and demand generally increased due to inflation or other factors. So overall, positive correlation. But if you looked within specific time periods, holding that time factor steady, you'd see the expected negative correlation. Higher price, lower demand. Time acts as the confounder there.
And what about the psychology? Why do our brains struggle with this? The readings hinted it bumps up against our intuition about cause and effect.
Yeah, it seems like we naturally think if X is better than Y in situation A and X is better than Y in situation B, then X must be better than Y overall. It's like a basic rule of logic.
The sure thing principle, I think they called it.
Something like that. But the paradox shows that intuition breaks down when the choice of the situation, like picking a department or getting a treatment, is itself linked to the underlying factor that drives the outcome, like competitiveness or stone size. Our simple causal logic doesn't account for that confounding link easily.
And it's not like this is a one in a million thing statistically.
No, apparently not. Some studies estimate it can pop up, maybe around one time in 60 or even like 12, 13% of the time in certain kinds of data setups.
Hmm.
So, yeah, you're likely to run into it if you look at enough data.
Okay, then there was this other twist, Simpson's second paradox.
Ah, yes, that adds a whole other wrinkle. So, the first paradox basically says, be careful, the combined data can trick you. Look at the subgroups. The second paradox, though, it says sometimes, maybe counterintuitively, the combined data actually gives you the more sensible answer, even if there's a reversal in the subgroups.
Hold on, so it's not always drilled down into the subgroups. Sometimes the total picture is the right one. How do you know which one to trust?
Exactly. And that's the tricky part. You can't tell just by looking at the numbers in the table. The material really emphasizes this. It depends on the story behind the data, the causal process that generated those numbers. You need to understand why things are grouped the way they are.
Is this where that causal inference stuff comes in? Like Judea Pearl's work?
Yes, precisely. The sources mention understanding the causal web, how the treatment, the outcome, and that lurking variable are all connected. Pearl's ideas, like thinking about blocking backdoor paths between variables, give you a more formal way to decide. Should I adjust for this variable? Look at subgroups to see the real effect. Or does adjusting actually mess things up in this case?
So it's about figuring out if the grouping variable is truly a confounder you need to control for, or if looking at the group separately somehow obscures the real question you're asking.
You got it. It moves beyond just spotting the pattern to reasoning about causes. Does treatment A cause a better outcome? Once we account for things like stone size that might influence both the treatment choice and the outcome. Sometimes looking at subgroups helps answer that. Other times, maybe the overall comparison is actually more relevant to the decision you need to make.
So resolving it isn't just math, it's understanding the real-world system.
Right. It needs domain knowledge, thinking about how things actually work.
The readings also mention some pushback, right? People saying maybe paradox is too strong a word.
Yeah, there's that argument. Some statisticians say, look, it's not a paradox. It's just what happens when you fail to account for confounding variables. It's a basic statistical principle. Calling it a paradox might make it seem more mysterious than it is and maybe distracts from just doing careful analysis.
And that the way you choose to split the data can affect whether you see it or not.
That too. It's related to something called non-collapsibility. Basically, statistical relationships in subgroups don't always just neatly average out when you combine them, especially if the group sizes or the baseline risks are very different.
But even with those criticisms, it seems like the consensus is that Simpson's paradox is still super valuable as a concept, right? As a teaching tool.
Oh, absolutely. Call it what you will, paradox, reversal, confounding effect.
Mhm.
It's incredibly effective at showing why you cannot just take surface-level aggregate numbers and run with them. It forces you to ask the right questions. How is this data grouped? What else might be going on? What's the underlying story here? It's a powerful lesson in critical thinking about data.
Wow. Okay, this has been quite the journey into something that seems simple but is actually really layered.
It really is fascinating, isn't it? Simpson's paradox serves as this stark reminder. Overall numbers, those big headlines, can be incredibly misleading if you don't peek underneath. You have to understand the subgroups, the context, those potential lurking variables. How the data came to be is just as important as the numbers themselves.
Definitely makes you look at statistics in the news a bit differently.
It should. And maybe that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. Knowing about this now, where might you be seeing aggregate data in your own work? Or just in the world around you, maybe health stats, maybe performance reviews, maybe economic reports. Where might there be a hidden Simpson's paradox, a reversal lurking beneath the surface? And how does knowing this possibility change the kinds of questions you'll ask next time you see a simple average?